to the open meeting.
So moved.
It's been moved, it's been seconded. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion to return to open meeting. Let me pass these out. Reads, whereas the Gloucester County Board of Supervisors has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Gloucester County Board of Supervisors hereby returns to open meeting and certifies by roll call vote that to the best of each member's knowledge, only the public business matters lawfully exempted from the opening meeting requirements of the Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion to go into closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. Ms. Hobgood, would you please call at random the members of the board for a roll call vote?
Okay. Mr. Crew?
Voting yes to
Yeah,
come out.
yeah, it's cast yes to come out.
Yes, come out, right.
Mr. Riley?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Ressler?
Yes.
Ms. LaBerge?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Mr. Woodard?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Ms. Altman?
Yes. While we were in closed meeting, there were 3 motions that were made, and all 3 passed. And Supervisor Ressler, you made the motions, and so we must reduplicate the action that was taken in closed session now in open session. Would you please read verbatim your motion in closed session?
Madam Chair, in that Mr. Whitley, in October of 2007, informed the Board of Supervisors of his resignation effective January 31st, 2008, I move that his resignation be made effective immediately and that proper protocol be followed by allowing Mr. Whitley 1 hour from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, January the 3rd, 2008, to remove his personal property from his office and to return any items belonging to the county to an individual designated by the Board of Supervisors.
And the second was made
A second.
by Mr. Crew. It is my understanding, Mr. Whitley, Mr. Crew has agreed that he and I will meet you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. at your office door. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Supervisor Woodard, I apologize. We'll meet you at your office at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. You will remove all your personal belongings, and at 9 a.m. you will be escorted out of the building. This is business practice when someone in your position does leave the office. I would suggest that you not enter any office building on the county property until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. If you do so, it will be considered trespassing. Ms. Hobgood, would you please roll call? Excuse
There's a
me.
motion on the floor and we are allowed discussion on the motion. We have a
Excuse-
motion back on the floor, Madam Chairman.
Excuse me, one moment.
Yes.
Allow me to at least correct myself, okay? I apologize, Ms. Hobgood. When I get ready to ask, I want roll call vote at random vote, please. Excuse me, Supervisor Thaberge. Discussion is in order.
Yes, ma'am. And I will repeat what I said in closed session and now out in open session on this motion. I am very dismayed at this board for taking actions in this manner. This gentleman has served us for 24 years. This is not the protocol of this board. When the last individual resigned, which was the previous county attorney, they resigned with 60 days' notice, and this board allowed them to fulfill those 60 days, and they did not treat them this way. Again, I will talk about openness, information flow to this board, and the fact that you've done this basically behind several of our backs and already had this pre-planned, pre-written out, and pre-done. And so I am very dismayed, particularly with the 2 new board members who ran on a platform of openness. and transparency of government, and there's nothing open and transparent when it's done behind the scenes, and then these individuals are deep six the way they were in that boardroom. I'm sorry, but we sat out here and discussed a protocol, and y'all are not following it for replacing Mr. Whitley. And so, yeah, I'm very dismayed with this process and very dismayed with my fellow board members that they would take this action in the manner in which y'all have.
Any other comments? Supervisor Allen?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Whitley has served this county honorably for 24 years. And I just cannot believe he's been treated this way. You 5 people should be ashamed of yourselves, and I'm ashamed to be a part of this board. I've never experienced anything where an individual's been treated like this. And Mr. Whitley, I just apologize to you. I'm so
And I
sorry
do too.
this has happened in this manner.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
In reference to Supervisor Allen's comment, personally, I'm not ashamed of myself. I have no need to have that mindset. I'm serving the county since I've been campaigning. Several citizens has been concerned about a new beginning. Mr. Whitley have already put in his resignation on the 31st. I see no problem whatsoever in to accommodate my colleagues with their motion. That's the reason he's taken advance some of his leave. He's going to get paid. I grant the fact that we may disagree with methods, but the whole idea, this is a new year. I am a new board member. I do not operate in shame. I do operate in integrity, and I respect the fact the way we went about doing it.
Supervisor, excuse me, just one moment. Supervisor Crew and then Supervisor Riley.
Well, I too, during my whole campaign, had people come to me and said that it's time for a change. And I can't tell you how many people I have talked to that are ready for that change. And I, like Pastor Woodard, there's no shame here. I'm just doing what I feel is what the constituents are asking for.
I thank Mr. Whitley for his service, and my biggest problem was the 1 hour clear out your desk thing. That kind of bothered me, but I'm supporting the resolution, but I just thought we could give him more time.
Any other comments? Any further discussion? Ms. Hobgood, would you now please pull the board at random?
Ms. Altman.
Excuse me?
She's last.
I'm doing it
It's going to be...
always last? Okay.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Chair's always last.
Okay. Ms. LaBerge?
No.
Mr. Crew?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
No.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Mrs. Ressler?
Yes.
Mr. Riley?
Yes.
Mrs. Altman.
Yes. And for clarification, as Supervisor Woodard said, Mr. Whitley, you will be paid for the remainder of the month of January. You will not have to use any leave. And again, Supervisor Woodard and I will see you at your office at 8 a.m. in the morning. Supervisor Ressler, you had another motion?
Yes, ma'am. The motion in session was, Madam Chair, in that Mr. Stuck has recently informed the Board of Supervisors that his contract is not an annual contract, as it may be terminated at any time without further liability by either party upon 90 days' notice, and he has given the Board of Supervisors notice that he will be terminating the contract in May, meeting the 90-day notification requirement. I move that the termination of the contract take effective immediately, and that proper protocol be followed by allowing Mr. Stuck 1 hour from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, January the 3rd, 2008, to remove his personal property from his office and to return any items belonging to the county to an individual designated by the Board of Supervisors.
I've got this down that you seconded,
Yes.
Pastor Woodard?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, is there any discussion on the motion before us?
I will repeat exactly what I said before. I think this is a poor way to handle things. I think the fact that you had all of this stuff written up ahead of time means that you could have at least allowed other board members the knowledge that you were going to do this. We sat there and discussed, replacing people. I think you misled the public in some of these discussions. And my last concern is that you're now removing a county attorney whose reason for staying another 90 to 120 days was to conclude a lot of legal issues for this community, a bunch of it to do with reassessment. And now those citizens are not going to get their issues dealt with in a timely manner. And I think you're doing the citizens a grave disservice by getting rid of the county attorney on such short notice. Because the whole rationale for the length of time he was staying was so that he could tie up all these legal matters and properly serve the citizens of this community. So again, I'm very dismayed with my new board members particularly, that y'all would be a party to this.
Any further discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
I believe Mr. Stuck has served our county honorably too. And, again, I just cannot believe this treatment, Mr. Stuck. I apologize to you. And there's 4 people that I believe should be ashamed of how they conducted themselves. You just don't treat people this way.
Any other comments?
As I've stated with my colleagues' comments of using words as I should be ashamed personally, I think that it's clear with Mr. Stuck's already issued his resignation. He did not desire to have it he did not desire to continue to serve. I think I recall reading his letter that he has plans of going another direction with his practice. So from my perspective, Mr. Allen and Supervisor DeBurge, on my vote, is we're accommodating him with pay. He have already made the decision to resign. And as a representative of the citizens of Ware, out of wisdom of getting a clean slate and getting a fresh start, that leaves us that opportunity. It's not as though that we're pushing, making any of these servants to do something. This is something that they have initiated. And with that being concerned, you cannot say from the perspective with Mr. Whitley resigning, Mr. Stuck resigning, we got budget problems, we got reassessment problems, we got many issues before us. But these individuals chose of their own doing to resign for whatever reasons. I, as an individual serving the citizen, I have to use that same liberty without being judged by my colleagues to be ashamed.
Supervisor Allen.
In reference to that, certainly accepting a resignation is nothing to be ashamed of. Shoving somebody out the door with an hour's notice like they're a criminal, like they've been accused of a crime, is a great deal difference in treating somebody as you'd want to be treated. When I left my last job, I was not treated that way, I can assure you. I was there to the end, and I was paid 3 months bonus for doing so. Treatment of people is something you can be ashamed of. And how you've treated these 2 men tonight is definitely something you should be ashamed of, because they did not deserve being treated like criminals.
I agree with you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
And not to be redundant, as a citizen sitting in the audience, I have seen a lot of stuff that the prior board should be ashamed of, as well as Mr. Whitley, as well as Mr. Stuck. Well, I never heard you speak up in that regard. So, your opinion now I respect and totally disagree with. The hour departing, I asked that question in the back. I was told business practice, protocol. We had some difference of opinion about it from Supervisor the Verge. However, the vote went with the majority. I also stated my concern about that. However, as I stated, we're moving forward from the desires of these 2 individuals to resign and we've taken liberty of deciding when and how. We may differ, but once again, I don't feel shame at all. I think it takes a lot of boldness, a lot of guts, a lot of leadership to make a hard decision as we've done tonight. And I do want to commend my new chair for taking that stand.
Supervisor Allen, I have absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. When the prior board hired Mr. Stuck, I was absolutely opposed to it. There were practices at that time that I voiced very loudly to my then board colleagues that I felt were unethical, I felt were questionable, and you all ignored me. There were times that I came to this meeting that the only time that members of this board would speak to me were during a meeting, would not speak to me otherwise. That to me was shameful behavior. Talk about being treated like a criminal, okay? Then I remember a phone conversation when you told me, you called me, and you told me that I wasn't going to be the chair of this board because of my behavior in the way I acted. You told me there were consequences to my behavior. Rick, I'll never forget that. That was hurtful. And I told you then that if you want to lie to the people, you can lie to them, but I'm not going to do it. That was shameful to me. But in your mind, that was not shameful to you. I have no remorse in what I believe to be the right direction. Both of these men have chosen to resign. We have not fired them. They will be compensated according to the contract, 90 days for Mr. Stuck and 3 weeks for Mr. Whitley. We will differ on that, but in my opinion, they're to be compensated. This is business practice, and it happens all the time. There are some people, Supervisor Allen, that are not given the courtesy of cleaning out their desk or having any opportunity to go back in the office. It happens every day. Once again, you're entitled to your opinion. Although we disagree, I respect you for it. The same with you, Supervisor Thurberge. Although you're entitled to your opinion, we disagree, but I still respect you for it. I hope that in some way you both will respect me for my decision. With that said, are there any other comments to be made by any member of this board? There's a motion before you. Ms. Hobgood, would you please call the roll in random order?
Mr. Riley?
No.
Mr. Allen? Mr. Crew?
Yes.
Ms. Thurberge?
No.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Mrs. Ressler?
Yes.
Ms. Altemus?
Yes. Mr. Stuck, tomorrow morning, Supervisor Ressler and Supervisor Crew will meet you in your office at 8 o'clock. You will be compensated for your 90 days, and that will be taken care of. And again, you're not to go back to the office tonight once you leave the meeting. If you come on county property until 8 a.m., it's considered trespassing. Next resolution you had, Mr. Supervisor Crew.
Madam Chair, asked to be excused.
Excuse me?
Asked to be excused. Thank you.
Supervisor Crew, you have a,
Yes, Madam Chair, I would like to entertain a motion to hire an interim county administrator, Lacey Smith, beginning tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
Second that.
okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the employment of an interim county administrator?
Yeah, again, I will say the same thing. You had this planned, it was all done ahead of time, you didn't have the courtesy to tell anyone else. The fact this is a personal friend of yours, I think is appalling, that that's who we're hiring, Mrs. Altemus. And I have a real problem since we sat here and discussed a process for hiring an interim county administrator. and we went, and the expectation was you would come back at a future meeting with names, and we'd have a chance to discuss them. And then we walk back into a closed session, and we're handing an employment agreement that's already been written out with a name filled in. So yes, I'm very dismayed with my fellow board members, because the openness, transparency, allowing the citizens of this community to know what was going on, I think you may be surprised that there'll be a whole lot more people dismayed by the way you've handled this than you seem to think.
Supervisor Theberge, yes, I know Mr. Smith. I have been a friend, and I will let the record state that. Also politically, and you as well have been connected with Mr. Smith.
I know Mr. Smith, and believe me, I'm very dismayed to see him on this piece of paper.
Supervisor Theberge, I have the floor. You have been politically associated with him as well. He's provided political advice to you as well, and I make that statement. I think that that this is fine. Now, your comment about handing out an employment agreement, when Mr. Stuck, and I said this in there, and I'll say it again, when Mr. Stuck was interviewed, he handed out his contract to the board at that time. And I was the vice chair at the interview. Yes, ma'am, he certainly did.
I honestly
He handed
do not
it out
remember.
like shuffling a deck of cards. But I will tell you that it was at that time I was vice chair, and I was not informed of his contract. In fact, Mr. Allen, who has left, who was a member of the board, and Mr. Bland handled the contract at that time. So this is not new. And it is business practice, and we are in accordance to what we are supposed to do. Are there any other comments from any member of this board? Ms. Hobgood, would you please call the roll in random order and note that Mr. Allen got up and left the meeting, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Crew?
Yes.
Mr. Riley?
Yes.
Mrs. Ressler?
Yes.
Ms. TheBurge?
No.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Ms. Altomans?
Yes. All right, is there any further business to come before the board?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'd like to move that the chairman of the Board of Supervisors be given the authority to negotiate with outside counsel to provide legal services to Gloucester County until a full-time county attorney can be hired, with the understanding that the chair will not hire any outside counsel without prior approval of this board, and that the chair will bring the pertinent information regarding the hiring of outside counsel back to this board for approval at our January 15th, 2008 meeting.
Second.
You've heard the motion and the second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I think this board should know ahead of time who the outside counsel is that you're planning to negotiate with. I do not think that you should just be going out and negotiating with just anybody.
I'm not going to. I have no intentions to. What I will do is I've certainly...
Why is there, what is the issue of allowing information flow so that board members may know who's giving them legal counsel?
You will have that information. I will go out and I will contact some folks, and I will bring all that information back to this
And
board.
exactly what are we going to use for legal counsel in the morning, since we no longer will have this
We have an
discussion?
assistant
We have an
county
assistant
attorney
county attorney.
who is being paid to do the job and should be able to do the job. Any other discussion? Okay. Is there any other business to be brought before this board?
Let's go.
If not, a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
So moved.
Second? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign.
We didn't go about that. Ms. Hobgood? Ms. Hobgood, did we go?